Myself, Dr. Sunil Alexander. I am the Secretary of Smart City Branch. This is the fourth CD of our branch. Thank you all for joining. Uh, the topic for the fourth CD is basic suturing techniques, and the speaker for the day is Dr. Shiba Soni. I welcome Dr. Shiba Soni. I request Dr. Deepak to introduce the speaker.
Myself, Dr. Deepak Thomas, CD Chairman, Idea Smart City. Very happy to introduce the speaker for the day, Dr. Shiba Soni. And this is our fourth webinar of Idea Smart City. And if I am telling about Dr. Shiba Soni, she is a skilled periodontist and an oral implantologist. She has completed her bachelor's of dental surgery in 2014 and master's of dental surgery in periodontics in 2018. Since then, she is providing oral healthcare services. She has completed her education from esteemed D.Y. Patel University School of Dentistry, Navi Mumbai. She is extremely passionate about her profession. She is knowledgeable and likes to keep herself updated about the recent advances in the field of dental surgery. Dr. Shiba has a great clinical experience and likes to share her knowledge and skill by various educational platforms and conducting workshops. She is a consultant to many clinics in and around Mumbai. She has many awards to her credit and has articles published in national journals. Apart from her excellence in dentistry, she believes in charity and is a member with few knowing egos in Mumbai. Dr. Shiba, we are eagerly waiting for your webinar and we expect a knowledge enlightening session. And now itself, a lot of participants have already registered, and hopefully within 5 minutes we will get more crowd and expecting a great session. We welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you so much for this warm introduction, Dr. Deepak. If you want, I can begin, or should we wait?
No, we'll begin because we are on time.
Okay, sir. So good evening, everybody. I hope you guys are doing great and are fine in this pandemic. And thank you, Indian Dental Association, Kochi, for having me and inviting me as a guest speaker to talk about suturing. So we shall begin. So let's discuss about sutures. Well, before we get into the depth of sutures, let's first know what are the importance of sutures. We all know that sutures are basically for primary intention closing and to close the wounds, but that's not the only reason why sutures are there. Sutures are also there to protect the wounds from external forces. They allow clot stabilization and clot formation. They also helps to withstand the functional stresses that have been acted upon by them. So today in this webinar, we'll be talking about the different types of suture materials that are there, the indications, the contraindications where you can use them, also about the different needles that are available, the 6 basic suturing techniques that are there, their indications, what are the post-op instructions or complications that you can encounter, and about sutureless techniques as well. So first, let's just broadly classify them. We can classify them as absorbable and non-absorbable. Well, absorbable is the ones that gets hydrolyzed, while non-absorbable get encapsulated or walled off. Next we have is natural and synthetic. Naturally occurring sutures, they cause a lot of irritation to the oral hygiene, to the oral tissues compared to the synthetic ones. You have a monofilament and multifilament. Now this is again a very important criteria when you select your suture material. Now monofilament sutures are basically single stranded. So what happens is that they do not allow bacteria to adhere to it, which does not pass into the wound area. Now this effect is commonly known as a wicking effect, which is very common in multifilament sutures because they are braided, so they allow the bacterial adhesions to take place. Next we have is coated or non-coated. Now to prevent the thing which is known as wicking effect, many of the sutures, multifilament especially, they are being coated with wax or antimicrobial agents. You can say triclosan, you can say calcium stearate to prevent wicking. And then we have the non-coated ones as well. So what are the ideal requisites you should know when you're selecting your suture material? first and very important thing is, which is known as a tensile strength. Now, tensile strength is basically, I talk about the flexibility of your material and the property of your suture to withstand and hold the wound in place. The more the tensile strength, the better the suture material will be. Next, obviously, it has to be tissue biocompatible. It should cause less irritation to your tissues and your wound area. So naturally occurring sutures, they cause more tissue irritation compared to the synthetic ones. Next, we have capillarity. Now, capillarity is basically, again, the ability of the tissue to prevent, the suture to prevent bacteria to enter into the wound area. So the lesser the capillarity, the better the material it is. So monofilament sutures, they have low capillarity compared to a multifilament suture. Handling property, that is also equally important. You should be able to handle the material easily, and also it should easily pass through the tissues as well. And sterilization, definitely. Make sure the materials that you use are autoclaved and are sterilized. The packed materials that you get, they are sterilized, they're pre-sterilized, so you don't have to sterilize them again. Okay, now what are the different types of suture materials? First, we'll be discussing about the absorbable sutures. So we have the catgut suture. Now, catgut suture, they're basically characterized as two, that you have the plain catgut and the chromic catgut. Now, the plain catgut suture, the problem or the disadvantage that was initially there, that it causes tissue reaction in 24 hours and the tensile strength loss was seen in 15 days, which was not a good thing because you do not want your suture material to have irritation. So to avoid that or to overcome that, they basically coated these catgut sutures with chrome, which is known as a chromic catgut suture. So it was seen that these chromic catgut sutures caused tissue reaction in 3 days, while its tensile strength was lost in 20 to 40 days. Now, these chromic catgut sutures, they are usually stiff and they dry very easily. So to maintain to avoid the stiffness, they were actually are stored in alcohol or glycerine. So before you use these sutures, always make sure that you wash them well with saline and then use it. Again, the disadvantage here is, since they're naturally occurring, they cause a lot of tissue reaction. So try avoid using them in infected or contaminated wounds. Next, we'll talk about is polygalactic 910, which is commonly known as Vicryl sutures. These sutures are basically of 3 types. You have a coated Vicryl. Now, Vicryl sutures are multifilament sutures. So to avoid bacterial adhesions, they are coated with calcium stearate. Calcium stearate does not allow the bacterial to adhere, and also it helps the suture to pass through the tissue easily. Obviously, the tensile strength is good. You have a suture material. If its tensile strength is good, after 2 weeks, at least 50%, it is considered as a good tensile strength. It can be used in infected areas. It can be used in your implant cases, grafting procedures, bone grafting procedures. There have been a couple of instances or cases which people have reported allergic reaction to Vicryl sutures as well. Next we have is Vicryl Rapid. Now, as the name says, rapid, it's that its tensile strength is lost much more faster. So these suture materials are indicated in only short-term wound support. That is something around 10 days. You can go opt for a Vicryl Rapid suture. Next, we'll be talking about Vicryl Plus. That is an antibacterial suture. So they are coated with triclosan. Now, triclosan is basically a broad spectrum antibacterial agent, which is effective against most of the common bacteria present in the surgical wound. This is also a good choice of material when you're going for a grafting procedure, implant procedure, or a soft tissue graft. You can opt for something which is antibacterial, or even if you know the tissue area is more contaminated or infected, you can opt for a Vicryl Plus. Next is a monocryl suture. Well, this is a synthetic monofilament suture. Its tensile strength is lost over 3 days, and the absorption is 90 to 120 days. In spite of being a monofilament suture, it has good strength, and it's not very rigid. It is flexible. A lot of monofilament sutures usually are very rigid, but in case of a monocryl, it is quite flexible, and it has less memory. Now here, when I talk about memory, I mean is that its ability to go back to its original form. So a lot of monofilament sutures have good memory, but a monocryl has less memory. So it is superior compared to the other synthetic sutures. This again suture material is a very good suture to use it in your bone grafting procedures, in your implant procedures, in advanced surgical procedures. You can definitely opt for a monocryl. Compared to a silk suture, if you see, this is a little expensive. That's the only major disadvantage it has. Next is polydiaxanon suture. Well, this suture has excellent tensile strength, but it has the poorest knot security compared to all the synthetic sutures that are there. So this suture is basically not advised if you're going for a long-term wound stability. If you're going for something which is shorter, you can definitely go for this suture. Yeah, that's the major disadvantage of this suture. See, basically all sutures are good to use it in a lot of bone grafting procedures and implant procedures. You just have to decide depending on the tensile strength and the wound support where you can use these sutures. Next, we have polypropylene, which is commonly known as Prolene. Again, this suture has excellent tensile strength, and it has the ability to expand more 30% before breaking. Compared to PDS2, well, its knot security is also weak, but not very weak. So again, this suture material can be used if you are expecting a shorter wound support. Nylon sutures. Well, nylon sutures are available in both monofilament and multifilament suture. This suture is very stiff and requires multiple knots and has very bad handling properties. Now, if you're giving a nylon suture and when you cut the suture ends, what happens is the suture can irritate or hurt the patient. So in such cases, you can obviously opt for something which is known as a Copac. You can apply it over the suture so that it doesn't cause tissue irritation or doesn't irritate the patient much. Well, we do not use nylon sutures because of its stiffness. Next, we have is a silk suture, the most commonly used suture, very easy to handle, very good properties, knot properties. Since it's black in color, it is more easily visible to the eye. So tissue removal is, suture removal is very easy. But the only disadvantage a silk suture has is that it causes maximum tissue reaction. There are a lot of studies that have been done which have compared these suture materials, and they have found that silk sutures gives maximum inflammatory reaction compared to the other sutures. But we do use it because of its good handling and good knotting properties, and also it is economic. Now, polytetrafluoroethylene sutures. These are something which have been newly introduced, newly as in around 6 to 8 years back. But these come in the name of Teflon or Cytoplast sutures. They are monofilament sutures, and they are extremely easy to handle. They have good tensile strength and excellent good knotting properties. They have been widely used suture materials in membrane grafting, bone grafting, implant procedures, a lot of advanced recession coverage procedures. We use Teflon or PTFT. Well, this was all about the different suture materials. We have covered about the absorbable, non-absorbable, synthetic, natural suture materials. Now we'll talk about the different type of suture sizes. Well, 3040, we all know, are the most commonly used suture size in dentistry. While the reason that we use it, because they are big enough to withstand the tension placed on them intraorally, and also they are strong enough for easier knot tying. So as the zeros increases, it becomes more finer and thinner. And as the number increases, again, it becomes finer. Now 50 is a suture size that are used in a lot of grafting procedures, especially soft tissue grafting. We opt for a 50. And 90, 10 also can be used if you're doing a microsurgery. Next, we'll talk about is suture needles. So they are basically characterized as two, that is eyeless and eyed. Now, the ones that we normally use is the eyed needle. So basically what happens is when you're passing this eye needle through your tissues, you tend to pass through threads through it, that's why the reason they are called as traumatic needles. Compared to the eyeless, you only tend to pass one suture material, one thread, and there are chances of unthreading in an eyed needle compared to the eyeless one. So always try to opt for an eyeless one. Now in the packet material that you get, suture material, they are basically eyeless ones. The eyed ones are the ones that you get as a reel, or the loose ones, you opt for an eyed one. Next is the suture needle points. In dentistry, we have two basic ones, that is cutting edge and the reverse cutting edge. Now, cutting edge is basically when the triangle is pointed upwards. It is also called as a traumatic edge because it has the third cutting edge on the inside. So what happens is when you're passing it through your tissues, a lot of times you will see more bleeding in a cutting edge compared to a reverse cutting edge, because reverse cutting has its cutting edge on the outer curvature. So always opt for a reverse cutting edge, especially if you know that the gingiva is thin. You do not want to cause more trauma to the tissues. Now, what are the different types of suture needle shapes that we use? In dentistry, we basically use 1/2 or 3/8 commonly. 1/2 is basically used in a lot of posterior areas and sometimes in the mandibular anteriors as well. And 3/8 is used basically because it has a smaller arc of rotation. So, I mean, in a lot of grafting procedures, especially when we are doing soft tissue graft, we'll opt for something which is a 3/8 curvature. Now, how do we read a suture pack? Well, just a second. So first, we'll always start with something which is known as an imperial gauge. Now, imperial gauge is a US standardization. So that is 30. And you have a metric gauge, which is 2 pH euro. That's a European standardization. Now, 1 metric is 0.1 mm. So 2 metric will be 0.2 mm. That is the ideal size of a 30. That is 0.2 mm to 0.24 mm. Now, if here it was mentioned as 40, here it would have been 1.5. So then the size is 0.15 to 0.19 mm. That is the ideal size of 40. You have everything mentioned in your suture packet. That is, the needle size is there. The curvature will be mentioned. Now, cutting is mentioned, that it's a reverse cutting since the triangle is pointing downwards. The needle type, so this is 1/2. Now, even the length of the suture material is mentioned, that is 45. Do not try to reuse these sutures once the packet is open. And all these suture materials are always sterilized by ethylene oxide. Always check for the expiry date. And to order or to reorder, you can obviously check for the batch number and the product code. So this was all about the suture needles. Now, now when we are doing suturing, there are two types of gripping the needle holder. That is, the first is the palm grip. That is, you completely hold the needle holder in your palm. Now this gives you complete rotation in all the directions. The only disadvantage you will have is that if you want to regrasp, then you have to let it go and release it, and then again you have to regrasp it. So palm grip is mostly used in a lot of posterior areas, especially if you're doing a flap surgery, it's very difficult to use a tripod grip in the posterior area. So we opt for a palm grip. And a tripod grip is the regular grip that you do while holding a needle holder. The advantage that you have, you can easily release and then you can easily regrasp the needle. So this was all about the basics of suture materials, their needles and their sizes. Now let's move on to our basic suturing techniques. So the first suturing technique that we'll be talking about is the simple interrupted technique, the most commonly used technique. Well, the sutures are basically placed at an interval. So the advantage you have is that in case if one suture also opens up, you have the other sutures to hold and stabilize your wound. Used in mostly all procedures, whether it's your extraction circuit, whether it's your grafting procedure, soft tissue grafting, implant procedures, you can opt for a simple interrupted technique. So this is a video of how you do a interrupted technique. Well, I can't. Just a second. Yes. So this is the incision line. Now you have to keep some things in mind when you're giving suture. First is gently reflect your tissues and always hold it 1/3 from the eye. Always in a direction perpendicular. So and always try to go from the buccal side and then go to the lingual side. Now when you're giving, always make sure you at least 3 to 4 mm away from your incision line. So I've passed through my buccal. Now I'll be going towards my lingual in the same direction. While I'm doing that, make sure you go from movable to the fixed tissue, from thin to the thick tissue, and from the deeper to the superficial tissue. And always make sure that your surgical knot or the suture knot lies on the buccal side, because it could irritate the tongue and patient might just end up opening it. So I have gone through the lingual side and I will tie it on the buccal area. Make sure when you're tying the knot, it does not lie on the incision area, because there are times, when the patient comes back, there could be food stuck and you don't want that to enter through the knot, because that's the weakest point. So I've tied my knot. I'll be explaining the knots later further. Okay, I've used my finger just to stabilize the knot so that it doesn't move. And if you want, you can give more than 2 knots as well if you feel your suture is not stable. And always try to leave around 3 to 4 mm of the suture, because if it's lesser, there are chances of reopening as well. So this was the simple interrupted suture. Next we'll be talking about is a simple continuous suture. Well, this is also a simple interrupted suture, but placed in a continuous manner. And we always pass the suture perpendicular, but it always is seen as obliquely. And the advantage we have of a simple continuous suture is that it distributes the tension throughout in the wound area. But the only disadvantage we have is that if the suture opens up in one area, that is here, the entire suture can open up. So we preferably do not use a simple continuous suture, but you can use it in long span edentulous areas. So this is simple continuous suture. So I've passed it through my buccal side. Now I'm passing through my lingual side. In this, you do not cut the suture. Since in a continuous manner, we'll just keep the suture thread like that and cut it in the end. Only in the first strand. This is the loose strand, that's all. Now, I will go in a perpendicular manner, but the suture will lie in an oblique direction. So something like this. So you can see it comes obliquely. Again, so it's always done in a continuous manner. Now for the last one, I will not completely tighten it. I will use this to tie the knot, yes, and then cut the edges. So this is a simple continuous suture. Okay. Now there are two mattress suturing techniques. You have the horizontal mattress suture. So basically this suture is used to provide you eversion, which and in the areas of tension. Now eversion is basically what we need after sutures are removed. Now eversion is when wounds contract normally, they flatten out or they just invert. That is, they create a depth inside. That is what we don't want after sutures are removed. We want something that remains flat and remains everted. That's why we can opt for a horizontal mattress suture. And if you do not give these sutures properly, there are chances of suture adhesions. These suture materials are basically used in extraction sockets, in membrane stabilization if you're going for a grafting procedure, and for large distances, especially for long edentulous areas, you can opt for horizontal mattress suture. There are times that we use a combination of these sutures. We can give a horizontal mattress suture along with a simple interrupted suture as well. So again, I will pass through my buckle, and so when you're giving this suture, make sure you are at least 6 to 8 mm away from your incision line. Now, horizontal mattress suture is given in the same line. So in the same line, I would be giving my other throat. Now, always when you're suturing, make sure that you can either go for a toothed tissue foci or you can go with the one without it. Now, how do we decide that? When you have a lot of muscles or tendons there, you can go for a toothed one because that will help in holding it better. But if you're going for something which is more delicate, you can opt for a non-toothed one. Especially when you know the gingiva is thin, go for a non-toothed one. That is better. It does not also tear the tissue while you're holding it. So this is my horizontal mattress suture. Okay, do not tie your sutures very tightly because that could lead to blanching, and you want a good blood supply in that area for healing. Next, we have a vertical mattress suture. It's a very similar to a horizontal mattress suture, but in a vertical direction. It gives you better adaptation and maximum tissue approximation. It also causes eversion, and it is used to control soft tissue hemorrhage. Since they run parallel to the edge of the flap, they do not interfere with healing. Now, a horizontal mattress suture, where you can use it in deeper wounds. When you're doing something which is dealing with aesthetics, opt for a vertical mattress suture. Now, what happens is basically if you're going for an interrupted suture, like in this case, if I would have gone for an interrupted suture, the tissue here, the interdental papilla would have become flat. But here, since I've given a vertical mattress suture, there is no interference with the interdental papilla. So aesthetically, it's more pleasing. In case if there are narrow interdental areas, opt for a vertical mattress. But in cases where you feel you have a broader interdental papilla, you can definitely go for a horizontal mattress suture. And aesthetically also, we have tried to make sure that the suture not lies on the palatal side, but only in aesthetic areas. This looks more pleasing to the patient as well. So the vertical mattress suture. Now again, I will go far away from the incision line, that is around 8 to 10 mm, because we have to again come back from the same direction. So now I'm coming back to the buccal side in the same line as this. I have to make sure that I'm at least 3 to 4 mm away from the incision line. The more closer you are to the incision line, there are more chances of tissue tear. Now, when you're giving these sutures in where you have presence of teeth, in interdental area especially, always go at the base of the interdental papilla, not at the tip or the center. You might end up tearing the flap or the interdental area. Try to go as deep as possible. So this is vertical mattress suture. Next we have is a crisscross suture, or what we call as a figure of 8. Now we know that figure of 8 is most commonly used in extraction sockets. We do use them in donor sites as well if we are doing a grafting procedure. Also, if you want to stabilize a membrane, we can opt for a figure of 8. In flap procedures, if in the posterior areas, if it's very difficult to give a interrupted suture, you can definitely go for a figure of 8. But in those cases, then make sure that if you have done a grafting procedure, do not go for a figure of 8. Then opt for a horizontal mattress or an interrupted suture. So again, I start with my buckle. Sorry. And I will go towards my lingual side. So whichever direction you're going, the suture needle will point in that direction. Now it will be a crossover. So again, I will start from the buccal side. Likewise, I'll go on the lingual side as well. And then cross it over back on the buccal side and tie the knot. So this is a figure of 8. Now we'll talk about a periosteal suture technique. Well, periosteal suture technique is basically we do it if we are going for an apically displaced flap. So it has two suturing techniques here. You have a holding suture, which is basically an horizontal mattress suture. So you pass your horizontal mattress to the periosteum. So it helps to hold the flap in that area. And then you have a closing suture, which could be either an interrupted suture or you can opt for a figure of 8. And so this basically prevents the flap to displace further and also gives it a new position. So we have completed 6 basic suturing techniques. We have spoken about the simple interrupted, the continuous suture, the 2 types of mattress suture, the figure of 8 and the periosteal suture. In case you have any doubts, please note it down, and by the end of the webinar, you guys can let me know and we can solve those doubts. So let's move ahead and we shall be talking about the surgical knot. Now the surgical, well, there are 3 types. You have the granny knot, you have the square knot, and you have the surgeon's knot. The knot that we give in surgeries is the surgeon's knot. So there are 2 basic categories. You have something which is known as 2-2 or 2-1. What I mean by 2-2 is that when you hold the suture and when you turn it around, you can either give 2 rounds clockwise or anti-clockwise and tie, and the other one would be on the opposite direction of what you have previously given. So this is known as 2-2. 2-1 is, again, you can go clockwise or anti-clockwise, and the one would be in the opposite direction of whatever you have given. Now, if you feel that the suture that you have given is the knot is not stable, you can obviously give one more knot exactly in the opposite direction of what you have given last. Basically, just make sure that the knot is stable and is not displaced. You can use your finger to stabilize the knot in the place. Now your suturing is done. What are the post-operative instructions you give? Basically, they are very similar to the instructions that you give after extraction. You ask the patient not to spit. You can give a cold compress to avoid hot and spicy food, to avoid eating from that side. Do not brush from that area. When you're giving sutures, ask the patient not to reflect that side and check what has been done, and to avoid his tongue in that area as well. You ask the patient to come after 7 to 10 days for suture removal, but a 24-hour post-op is something which is more advisable. And in case if you feel the patient's oral hygiene is very poor, you can ask the patient to use a chlorhexidine mouthwash. But that is always 24 hours later, because you need time for primary clot formation as well. So now you have given post-op instructions. Your patient will come after 7 to 10 days for suture removal. So when you're doing a suture removal, there are some things that you have to keep in mind, that when you cut the suture, always cut it from the most exterior point, because you do not want the exterior suture material to enter your wound area. Well, there's a video as well. So always hold it by the knot, gently hold it up, and always cut it at the most exterior point. So that will minimize the amount of external suture to enter your wound area. Okay, now how does healing will look after suture? Well, you can see the first picture here. So this is a soft tissue grafting procedure that has been done. Sutures have been given. The patient is recalled after 14 days. And you can see some amount of inflammation and edema in this area, but that will settle down after maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and the tissue will be more better and firm after a couple of months. Now, when you call the patient for suture removal, if you feel the area has not healed, you can extend it up till 14 days as well. Try to avoid and extend it beyond 14 days, because then it will start acting as a foreign body, especially for silk sutures. If you're going for absorbable sutures, you can definitely wait for a more longer time. Healing in this area, now it's for surgical extraction for impacted molar. So there are times that, it happens after suturing. Once you remove the sutures, there is dehiscence that you can see. So now this will heal by secondary intention. It is very common. This basically has happened because there was no undermining of the tissues that was done. That is, the tissues were the muscles that were not released properly. So that's why the tissues, the site has just opened up. So there's nothing to worry about. You can just ask the patient to do more warm water gargle, and the healing will be much more faster. Next, again, this is a case where a laterally displaced flap was used to cover the recession area. So this picture is after 14 days when the patient came. So I have used a silk suture, 50. And this is healing after 14 days. Now again, this area will completely heal, and the color will also stabilize in a couple of months. Now, what are the complications that you can see or encounter? First is allergic reaction. Well, this is very common if you use a naturally occurring suture compared to a synthetic suture. There you will see tissue necrosis that can take place, something like this, that can happen. So always take a good history with the patient. Next is suture dehiscence. Again, this is a very common complication that can happen. So here the suture site has opened up and there is exposure of the bone graft. So in such cases, what basically you do is you remove the sutures, you undermine the tissues. By undermining, I mean basically you coronally advance the sutures below and then give your sutures. Here, basically interrupted sutures have been given. You can opt for a better suturing technique, that is a horizontal mattress with a interrupted suture, since it's a long span area. Next, you can file as a railroad track appearance. So this is again also a very common complication that you see. Now that is because you must have applied too much pressure while suturing, or you have left the suture for a longer period of time. The other complication, what you can see is suture abscess that will happen around the suture area. So in that case, you remove the suture and drain the abscess, clean the area, and in case if you feel you require another suture, you can always give that. The other complication you might encounter is tissue tear, especially if you're while suturing, if you pass the needle very close to the incision area or at the tip of the interdental papilla or in the center of the interdental papilla, there are chances of tissue tear. If you have any other complications you guys have encountered, do mention it in your question answer and then we can solve it. So now we'll talk about the newer materials that are available for wound closure. That is a tissue adhesive, which comes with the brand name of Dermabond. So now these basically contain cyanoacrylate, that is 2-octyl cyanoacrylate is present. So they polymerize in the presence of hydroxyl ions in moist tissue and they give an exothermic polymerization. So basically in presence of saliva and blood, they become hard and they are placed in that area. So you can see here, they have polymerized and it has good hemostatic and bacteriostatic property. And it also acts as a mechanical barrier and reduces the healing time. The disadvantage here is that if your patients are allergic to cyanoacrylate, do not use this. And also avoid them in case if you feel there is atrial or venous bleeding, avoid for a tissue adhesive. And again, these materials are very expensive. And you should not use them in areas of tension. So again, the other material we have is a fibrin glue, which is fibrin sealant as a brand name. Well, it contains fibrinogen, thrombin, and factor 13. Again, this has good hemostatic property, and it's a good tissue adhesive. It fixes tissues after periodontal surgery, and its absorption time is around 10 to 14 days. And if you feel the tissues are sensitive, I mean the patient is sensitive to bovine, do not opt for fibrin glue and do not use them in infected or contamination areas and do not apply them intravascularly. Again, these materials, this again is very costly. Maybe like a 2 ml will cost you, if you go for a good brand, will cost you around 10,000 to 11,000 rupees. So yeah, this was all about sutures. We have spoken about the different, what are the ideal requisites that you should know, the different suture materials that are available from absorbable, non-absorbable, monofilament, multifilament, the different type of suture needles, the sizes, the 6 types of basic suturing techniques, the complications that you can encounter, and also sutureless techniques that are available. In practice, I would say definitely silk suture is the suture which is more economic, good handling properties, good knotting properties. That is something which we can always opt for, but always try to use the different types of suture materials that are available. Um, According to me, monocryl is a good suture material if you want to go for something which is absorbable. If you're going for non-absorbable, you have Teflon, that is PTFE, or you can even go for Prolene sutures. But I would say try all the sutures, see with the suture material that you are comfortable with. Keep trying different techniques that are there and see which technique you are more comfortable with, and in different kinds of, in different, like different procedures. So keep trying all those techniques. So you will get a better hand of it and it will be much more quicker and faster. So this was all about sutures and its suturing techniques.
Doctor, there are some Q&As.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is the best suture material, Dr. Shahina?
Like I said, if you're going for a non-absorbable suture, you can go for a silk suture or you can go for a Prolene suture. But if you're going for an absorbable suture, you can go for a monocryl suture. Well, there's nothing known as a best suture material, but because all sutures have their different indications, contraindications. So you can obviously try all of these, but I would say monocryl for an absorbable one, and you have silk sutures there. Even you have the best one, you can even opt for a Teflon, that is PTFE. It has excellent properties. So yeah, but do try all the suture, different types of suture materials in your practice.
Can we use figure of 8 for all surgeries?
I would say no, especially if you're going for a grafting procedure. Opt for something which will give you a more watertight suturing, watertight closure. Like right now, since I've shown it to you, you can see something, it has given you a watertight, but figure of 8 usually does not give you a complete watertight closure. I would say you can go for horizontal mattress suture, and then simple interrupted suture would be advisable for basically all your surgical procedures.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, please explain about the periosteal suture once again.
Sure. Just a second. Sorry. Okay, so periosteal suture is basically when you're doing an apically displaced flap. An apically displaced flap is when you are displacing the flap apical to your tooth, especially when you do crown lengthening procedures, or you want to increase the width of the attached gingiva. So once you've done that, you obviously undermine your muscles and tissues slightly beyond the mucogingival junction as well. You give now you give a holding suture, which is a horizontal mattress suture, and adapt it to your periosteum. Like somewhere, I mean, you can see it here. And then, so it will stabilize the flap in that place. And then you have to obviously close it in a certain place. So then you give a closing suture, which either could be figure of 8, or you can go for a simple interrupted suture. I would say go for a simple interrupted suture. And so this will adapt the flap at one place and not allow it to displace.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Next question is difference between monofilament and multifilamentous, the advantages and disadvantages of both.
So now for a monofilament, it's a single stranded filament. It does not allow the bacteria to adhere to it. When you compare it to a multifilament, since it's braided and twisted, bacteria adhesion is very common. What will happen if the bacteria adheres to it? It will pass through your suture and into your wound area and cause contamination or infection. So, but a monofilament suture, again, the tissue drag is what I would say is much more lesser. When you use a silk suture, you might find, when you're passing through, the tissues get dragged and it becomes a little more difficult. Also, the disadvantage for a monofilament would be that they're more stiff and rigid, that little difficult to handle compared to a multifilament suture. But nowadays, because there are a lot of newer materials have come in, a lot of multifilament sutures, a lot of monofilament sutures have also become more less rigid and more flexible to use.
Okay, next one is, can you explain about suture abscess?
Well, suture abscess is, it's an abscess that you'll see around a suture, which is very common if there is infection or contamination. So you just have to remove your suture and drain the abscess, check for a sinus tract. If it's not there, you can clean that area. If you feel like you can suture it back and recall the patient, otherwise you can let it be and let it heal on its own, which usually we do not see if you recall the patient after in between like 7 to 14 days. But if the sutures have stayed there for a longer period of time, especially for non-absorbable suture, suture abscess is very common.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Do all extractions require suture? What are the ideal cases where suture is indicated?
Well, all extractions do not require suture. The ideal cases, I would say for extractions, there is, like, if you feel you've done, multiple extractions, if you've done, you can definitely go for suture because you do not want a big area of wound to be open. Then for sutures, obviously you have your implant procedures, you have flap procedures, you have grafting procedures. In such cases, definitely sutures are required. But in all extraction cases, it's not required. Then you can go just, place your cotton or gauze in that area and ask the patient to close. But yeah, if you feel if there's a lot of bleeding and if it's not controlled, then please definitely go for a suture.
Okay. What are the indications for tissue adhesive?
Tissue adhesive, if you feel a patient does not want suture, is allergic to suture, you can go for a tissue adhesive. Make sure the site, like in a lot of soft tissue grafts, tissue adhesive is good because it enhances its healing. If you're going for extraction areas or if you want to close an extraction area, tissue adhesive is really not required. And yeah, the healing is faster. Aesthetically, it looks more pleasing, especially in anterior cases. You can definitely go for a tissue adhesive, but make sure the patient is not allergic and it doesn't have an artery or a venous vein involved. So just make sure.
Okay. Could you please comment about wound stapling?
Can I comment about wound stapling?
Yeah.
Well, intraorally, we do not opt for a wound stapling. That is mainly done extraorally. So maybe, obviously, like better than sutures, people prefer wound stapling. I don't know much about it, but yeah, maybe I can just find out and later email it to doctor.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. How many teeth surgery can we use one fibrin glue?
Well, see, it depends on the brand you use. So in case if you're using a 2 ml, around maybe 4 to 6 teeth is something that you can definitely go for a fibrin glue. It should be sufficient. Provided the area is not too large, like a flap procedure, you can opt for maybe a 2 ml for a quadrant flap.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Which suture is preferred for gingival augmentation procedures?
Now, it depends on which gingival augmentation procedure you're going for. If you're going for a soft tissue, maybe a coronally advanced flap, then there are different types of, actually, they're more advanced type of suturing techniques that are there. Maybe you can go for something which is known as a sling suture, like when you only open one surgical flap, you opt for you go for a sling suture. You can even go for a horizontal mattress suture, and interrupted sutures are there. Then there are many advanced suturing techniques that are there. So yeah, you have vertical stabilizing sutures, you have horizontal stabilizing sutures. So the different kinds of suturing techniques, we haven't covered them because we're only talking about the basic ones. In the basic category, you can definitely go for an horizontal mattress and interrupted.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Is suturing better or tissue adhesives in patients with hematology conditions?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question. Can you please repeat?
In patients with hematology conditions, do you prefer suturing or tissue adhesives?
Actually, there is no indication as such that I've encountered about tissue adhesive for bleeding disorders. Suturing, definitely you can go for, but I would say such cases we do not treat in our day-to-day practice if a patient has bleeding disorders. So yeah, you can go for a suture technique. Tissue adhesives, I haven't encountered. In case if there's a lot of bleeding, if you know you're very close to the artery, do not go for it. But in a normal case, you can try. I haven't encountered any article that mentions about bleeding disorders for tissue adhesives. So I'll just read that up.
Okay, ma'am. Will you recommend suturing suturing the area in the case patient wishes to go for implant after a month, as compression of socket and cotton placement can hamper the implant placement later?
I'm sorry, can you please repeat the question?
Do you recommend suturing in the area where we plan to place an implant? Because compression of socket and cotton placement can hamper the implant placement later. That's what.
Yes, like you can. So in such cases, we usually go for something which is known as socket preservation. So if you're going for socket preservation, definitely you have to give sutures because that will allow, it won't allow alveoloplasty, that is compression. So if you do that, then yes, sutures, well, it will not make much of a difference if you're giving sutures, if you don't give sutures. So, but you should go for something which is known as a socket preservation if you're going for implants and you do plan to place an implant after 1 month.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. How do we manage suture allergies?
Every allergy is different. So I'll just a second. So yeah, if you have something which is like an allergic reaction that is seen, tissue necrosis has taken place, remove the sutures, remove the necrosed tissue, clean it well with the betadine solution or chlorhexidine solution, and just suture it back with the suture material which the patient will not be allergic to. Next, we have is suture dehiscence. Here again, if the sutures have opened up, you remove the sutures and you undermine the tissues and then close the sutures. I guess this was the question, right?
Yeah.
Suture allergies, yeah. Okay. So allergy, yes. Obviously, you have to remove the necrosed tissue, clean that area very well. Take a good history with the patient, and then maybe you can opt for another suture material and then suture it back. Maybe the procedure you might have to postpone and do it later. At least just wait for the area to heal better and then opt for whichever procedure you want to do.
Okay, ma'am, thank you. Is there any brand name for tissue adhesives?
Derma Bond is the brand name. I think it's mentioned in the slide as well. Here. So for the tissue adhesive, you have Derma Bond. It's a very common brand name. Or you can even ask for 2-octyl cyanoacrylate, which is a common tissue adhesive.
Okay, ma'am. So I think the questions are over, ma'am. Sunil sir, are you there? Shall we conclude the program?
Yeah, we can conclude. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
You can
Thank you so much.
Deepak, you're concluding.
So on behalf of Idea Smart City, I would like to thank Dr. Shiba for an excellent talk. We had a lot of delegates who have registered from Mumbai and also other parts of India. Apart from Kerala, we got so many delegates from Mumbai, Gujarat, etc., etc. So we thank you for an excellent session. It was a session packed with knowledge. And definitely the PGs who have attended, there are many PGs who have registered for the program and who have attended. That is going to be useful for them. Also for the general practitioners, many people who are not aware, because we usually go for the simple interrupted suture. So the different types of sutures, it is definitely going for the hands-on which you have given, that is a live demo which you have given, is definitely going to be useful for us in general practice. So thank you for a great session, ma'am. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you once again. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank
Also,
you.
I would one second. I would like to thank MedPaper Technology also for supporting us for the program, because for the past 1 hour, Ms. Nikta has supported us with her help from MedPaper Technology. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dr. Deepak. Thank you, Doctor. That is a wonderful section.